All right, so this is officially being recorded and will probably be released to the public. So could I get everybody on the call to verbally consent to that, please? I'll start. My name is Charlie and I consent.
I'm Jonathan. I consent.
Yeah, I'm Brian. I'm good with that.
I'm Ben. I consent. I don't think I'm in a state where you have to consent, but
Better safe than sorry.
I concur. Messages authentic.
Oh, let's stop it. Crazy dog. Sorry.
So sounds like Honey consents too.
No,
We are
that
here.
wasn't her.
We are. That was my dog. Yeah. We're here with Ben Hosp, who is the candidate for the director of second edition. And Ben, we're just going to ask you some questions and just get some more information from you. I'm going to try to keep this at about an hour or less, but we'll see where we go. So just so you know, Ben, applications are still open for the position through next Friday. As of right now, I have 2 interviews scheduled and you are the first.
Mm-hmm.
All of these interviews will not be released to the public until they're all complete. So they are all released at the same time. So until that point, I would ask you not to talk about this interview or anything discussed within. Okay?
Sure.
All right. So I'm just going to get started and ask for a little bit more information from your application. Anyone else, feel free to jump in if you have a question, and then I'll cede the floor to Jonathan and Brian if he's able to ask their questions. And then I have questions that other members of the panel who couldn't make it today have submitted. So we'll start out, Ben. We asked you about your history with second edition, and you gave a pretty brief answer, which is fine, but we'd like you to elaborate a little bit and just tell us how long you've played 2E and why you still play and notable moments in your career as a 2E player.
So I've played second edition since I guess since Energize came out. I don't know, maybe Call to Arms. I don't remember, but it's from a long time ago. I guess the most notable moment is I won North American Continental Championships on Charlie's Kidney Stone year.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, they suck, don't they? I've been involved on and off all along. I have worked on design for a couple sets, and I mainly still play because of I would say I still play more because of friendships made playing the game than because of the game itself.
Well, that's fair. Thank you for that. So I'd like to get from you some additional information about your leadership and project management experience. Doesn't have to be related to 2E. Can you give me an example where you were a leader for, a multi-part project and some examples of when you've had to manage different people with different goals to get to a finish line?
No, I would say that a weakness of my candidacy is I don't have leadership experience. What I do have is experience with the actual behind the scenes situation in second edition, and I think I have a handle on what some of the problems are.
Okay, well, let's just jump straight into that then. Why don't you give me the top 2 issues you think second edition is going to face as you would transition into this role if we were to offer it to you?
Right. So there's both a public set of problems and what I would call a private set of problems. So there's both I'm gonna sort of cordon off the behind the scenes second edition community for now. The public community there's no other way to say it. The public community is sick. And I don't think anyone in particular is to blame for that. I particularly don't think that, despite my disagreements with the moderation team, I don't think the moderation team or anyone on it is to blame for that. I think that the way that this community as a group processes disagreement and dissent is fundamentally broken. And I think that the root of that, and I've actually been writing something up about that, and it's hard to put it into words. I meant to have it posted by now, but it's hard to put into words what I think is not working in this community. And I think that the root of the problem is that there's a perception that the only way to get a perceived problem or complaint addressed or even acknowledged by anyone in any position to do anything about it is by what you might politely call spirited public debate. And I think that the next director of second edition needs to make a real effort to ensure that people with complaints are heard and acknowledged and, when possible, included in the process of addressing those complaints. Now, I do have some ideas about how to specifically do that, and Charlie, am I nuts to, or did you at one point, or do you still do some kind of office hours as first edition director?
I did do that several times last year, and then
Okay.
Google Hangouts shut down.
Okay,
So it got really hard to do. It is something on my to-do list to bring back now that
Right.
we have
So, okay,
reliable streaming tech. But
I
yes.
wondered, was I just hallucinating that? But okay, so yeah, I think that we need to start doing that on second edition, and whether or not that's a format I don't know if the streaming format is the best way to do it. Honestly, I mean, whatever, I'm not saying what you should do in first edition, but I wonder if that's itself a barrier to people, but either through some sort of streaming format or just a time when I promise to be actively watching the forums for communications. There needs to be some ongoing periodic formalized way to communicate with someone in a position to address complaints. And I also think that the next director, and I promise to do this if given the position, to maintain a list of what I consider to be open problems or the issues in need of being addressed, similar to the public errata watch list or like a list of known bugs in software, just as a way of just as a bare minimum way of letting people know that I'm aware of what people think the problems are, and to ensure that I'm not overlooking anything. Now, in terms of the behind the scenes problems, I don't know. I'm of two minds about it, because I have two sort of competing instincts. The first is that there's too many people with access to too many things in the background. I don't know how helpful it is to have, as far as I can tell, anyone who's ever been involved in second edition design or playtesting at any level has access to the playtest boards. And I don't know how helpful that is. I think that we've erred on the side of getting more feedback from more people. And it is strange to say out loud, well, we need fewer people with access to the playtest boards at the same time that we need a lot more playtesters. but I think we need to somehow formalize the distinction between actual playtest reports and what John and I have somewhat dismissively called scary stories. Like, well, what if this happened? Well, what if that happened? What if you make a deck about that and it doesn't work? Or, you know, can you make a deck that makes this bad interaction happen? And without, and the distinction is important because I have noticed I was on Shattered Mirror and what the Terra Prime set ended up getting called, a Less Perfect Union, right? Something like that. So with both the KCA deck and the Terra Prime deck, as a designer, I had a playtest deck of that. And it was easy to do that because it was you know, a new headquarters, a new sub-faction, whatever, and I was able to play a lot of playtest games of that, and I was able to be confident that the new headquarters were well playtested. On the other hand, it's hard to get playtesting to try to find, because those sets also had a lot of cards that weren't part of the main theme. It's if you have sort of 9 oddball, you know, personnel that aren't part of the theme in a set, it's hard to get playtesting with that because there's just not anyone. We just don't have anyone saying, I'm gonna try and make, I'm gonna try and see what's broken about this one guy in a set, if that makes sense. I don't know what to do about that. I know it's a problem. I do know that that actual playtesting needs to be at more of a premium. Another thing is that that there's a disconnect in when people get involved in the process. I don't like that. It seemed, as far as I can tell, the first time that anyone from the rules committee sees any new cards is when they make it to version A for playtesting. And I would like there to be some formal step before that happens, because I've noticed a lot of times that there'll be an idea and it'll make it sometimes pretty far in the playtesting process before and I understand why the rules team doesn't want to devote a lot of time and attention to cards that aren't actually going to get made, but it's a problem that we've had to pull cards that are toward the end of the design process and just don't work for some rules reason or other. And it feels like too much is happening. If I were to summarize all of these, it feels like too much is happening in the playtesting step of the process, and that should be divided into more discrete steps.
Okay, thank you. I have some more questions, but I don't want to monopolize the time. So, Jonathan or Brian, would you like to jump in with some questions? Or
Sure. I guess a good one to start would be, why are you personally a good fit for the role of director of second edition?
Me personally, I don't know why me personally. I suppose I would say if you found someone who agrees with me about everything, then they might be a better solution. But it's more that I think I have identified some problems and some solutions that I trust myself to implement.
Okay. You've already kind of touched on this with talking about the playtesting process and having rules involved and so forth. But with respect to each of the specific departments of TUI, design, rules, errata, creative, is there anything about how those departments operate, additional beyond what you've already mentioned, where you think there's room to change things or you hope to improve things somehow?
Yes, I think, and it's hard to say because I don't, I don't know who all is on all of these teams, and I understand. I don't even know if some of them the membership is purposefully secret. Like I accidentally outed Brian as on the errata team, not knowing that that was supposed to be a secret a few months back. But it feels like there's an issue where there's too many people in the room, and that's not necessarily an issue because of there's too many because there's too many voices in the room. It's that it's an issue of there's because there's too many people, no one actually does anything about the problem. I think that might be part of the issue with playtesting is it feels like there's a lot of people involved in the playtesting process, so no one actually does playtesting. It feels like yeah, that would be my example. I don't know, that's just my sort of diagnosis, not knowing who all is on what forum and who all, because I don't have access to that behind the scenes. But it's my perception that that's how the process operates, and that's where it's breaking down. It's breaking down in the stages where we present a product to a lot of staff people, and it's no one's job in particular to do something with it.
Okay. Sort of related to that question, what are areas that are under the director of second edition's purview where you'd say your understanding of how things work in this area is kind of weak and you'll need to learn more about it in order to lead on the job?
So as I said, I'm not familiar with how the teams that aren't design operate internally.
Okay.
And I don't know who all has who all is on which teams. I don't know. I don't know if my perception that my perception is that there's a lot of overstaffing and underperformance from the individual staffers at that. But I am open to thinking that that's incorrect. I should note that my perception is that behind the scenes, the state of the game itself is pretty okay. There's there's some problems around the edges and some controversies about what needs errated when or what, but I would say that the primary the much bigger issue is that the community is constantly at each other's throats all the time. And I think that the director of second edition has an important role to play in resolving some of those conflicts within the second edition community.
So can I jump in for a second and
Yes.
ask a follow-up to that?
Yes, please.
This is actually a question from one of the other members of the panel, TJ. But talk me through your vision to fix that, to unify this community, where, as you said, everybody's mad at everybody all the time. How do you tackle that?
Right. I have been, and as I said, I've been trying for I've been trying most of this morning to sort of sketch out what my plan to solve that would be, and it's hard. I don't think I can give a convincing diagnosis of the problem. as I said, I think the root of the problem is that we have I don't think it's a coincidence that seems like every year during the period of review, someone or some group of someone's gets a long-term ban. And I don't think that's, regardless of heated remarks I might have made in the past about this, I don't think anyone is setting out to silence dissent. I don't think that that's the intention of the moderation team or anyone on the board. I think that's just a pathology that we've developed. And I think that what needs to happen is that the people in positions of authority in this community, like the second edition director, need to go out of their way to address that problem. I think the second edition director needs to go out of their way to address, to hear and acknowledge complaints and address them without, and try to circumvent this. What I think the pathological or the toxic process that happens is someone has a complaint, and then a lot of people disagree, and then while a lot of people are disagreeing, no one in a position of authority is acknowledging the problem, either because they haven't noticed it yet, or they haven't, or they don't want to go off half-cocked. And I think that I think that and then by the time Maggie or Ross or whoever gets to do gets some thought through response, there's already been flare up of tempers, and the mods have gotten involved or whatever. So I think one important thing is that the second edition director needs to be less concerned with, I don't want to say less concerned with professionalism, but less concerned with being, with answering answering complaints in a complete way and answering them promptly. I think the idea and I think that the normal process needs to be, whether or not I agree with your complaint, or whether or not I have time to think through it now, people need to know that someone is listening and someone is hearing them. And I also think that because the dissenter tends to be in the minority, I think we do need to bend over backwards to make sure that they're treated with respect. I think that there's often a pattern of a complaint being responded to by a range of people who are helpful or unhelpful to a greater or lesser degree, and who sometimes because they have these so-called green badges, that can appear to come with a flavor of authority even when it doesn't. So when, say, Patty replies to some complaint about the second edition, that feels like the board or insiders having a response. But the first edition creative director, it's not really, that's not an official response to a complaint about second edition. And I don't want to say, and I don't mean to single him out, I don't want to say stay out of the second edition discussions. What I mean is that what I think the most important thing the second edition director can do is make every effort to be proactively involved in discussions, even at the potential risk of having to go back and say, I changed my mind about something I was thinking out loud. I think that the strong priority needs to be on public engagement more than even more than consistency, almost.
So, can you give me an example of a situation that's happened semi-recently or even historically where you feel that this pattern that you're describing took place?
Yes, and as I did during the period review, I want to try not to make this just shitting on Ross Day, but I remember during the period of review last year, I don't know whether it was before or after the peer review, but when the controversy over when John got fired as design director, people would that I and people who agreed with me would post something in the morning, and then there'd be arguments over that, and then in the evening maybe Ross would answer. And I think that answers from that obviously it's not a solution to everything, but I wish that if instead of people feeling the need to rush to the defense of the director or whatever decision was made, that the director himself was doing that. So I wish that there was more engagement.
Okay, so that gets into another particular topic, which is what is your expectation for you or for whomever this person is in terms of being available to answer questions like that? I mean, is it possible that in that situation you described, that when the person responded later in the evening, that was as early as they possibly could have responded?
Yes.
And that's not okay for you? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be judgy. I'm just curious.
You're right to bring that up, because that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that maybe it is, but only temporarily. What I think is what I think is the problem, and I've been on both sides of these arguments, and I don't know what other people are. I can't speak for other people's feelings. This is just my perception. My perception is that there is more of a cost to delayed response currently than there might be otherwise, because of an actual or perceived history of complaints being ignored. And I honestly can't say with any certainty whether, I honestly can't with any certainty exclude my personal disagreements with Ross to say whether he was any better or worse about this in any particular instance. But I think that at first the director needs to make a point of being available as soon as possible when there's controversies, to the extent that people should have his private contact information to let him know that there's something he needs to get involved in. And maybe that only needs to happen, for the first few months or so, but there needs to be some sort of public reestablishment of trust that complaints are heard and not ignored.
So I'm not trying to jump to conclusions. I just want to understand your point of view.
No, please do challenge me. Yes.
It sounds that like you're saying, if I get this position, I will commit to being available all day as quickly as possible, even if at work, even at vacation, even whatever. And anyone who can't do that shouldn't be considered? Or am I reading too much into what you're saying? Again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
I think that might be what I'm saying, but I don't think that's what I intend to be saying. So thank you for asking me to clarify that. What I'm saying is that I am saying, and I don't know that I'm saying that this is something that anyone considered for this position should commit to. But I think that and you're right that it's unrealistic to commit to even a temporary, I'm available 24 hours to answer questions, and I'm going to be the first. I want to be the first response on any thread. I think that, and I thank you for pointing out to me that I might have been accidentally committing to that or saying that. What I think is important is a reestablishment of trust. And I don't know what I don't know that I can say right now what that will look like 100%. I know that it involves a reestablishing the perception that problems are known and acknowledged. I think that I think that in the absence, I think that there has come to be among some people a perception that problems are constantly swept under the rug and not acknowledged. And I think that I think that may be leading me to put more of a priority on the fast, within hours or minutes turnaround on these things than I otherwise should. I think that just some visible prioritization of public engagement is necessary. But I think you're correct to caution me against making unrealistic demands of the next director, whether that's me or someone else, about their 24/7 access. I do think that some kind of office hours or public I guess I'll call it a bug list is steps toward that direction. I know I don't have the answer yet. I know that I know what direction we need to move in. I'm not sure I know how far or how to get there.
Okay, I do have one more follow-up, but I want to invite Brian or Jonathan to ask any follow-ups they might have before I jump in again.
Yeah, I got one more follow-up on this one.
Any other questions I had have been resolved.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
So Ben, regarding what you just said about establishing public trust and whatnot, and not having the roadmap to be there, you said that you were trying to put something into words. Are you able to, do you think, put something into words prior to the deadline for the 2E position being closed that we could then consider as part of entering it into the record or whatever, so we can get a better picture of what your strategic vision is?
Yes, and let me be careful what I'm promising here. I'm not promising I will have the solution to what is wrong with the community and how to fix it, or what is wrong with the game and how to fix it. I will have a more written down and thought out roadmap of what I think the destination needs to be, and how I think we get there. Sure, and how I think we get there. I don't know that I will have a solution that no one can argue with.
Okay. So related to that, and this is actually a question I wrote down to be asked on my behalf in case I couldn't dial in, and I have a quiet moment, so that's why I'm actually being vocal now. Your sort of campaign slogan for this whole thing was "I alone can fix it."
Yes.
So along those lines, given what you just said about not having everything fully developed, you think that you are the only person that can do this, or are you intending to leverage other volunteers in the community to help, develop and implement this strategy? Like, sort of get into what you meant and how you're actually going to get there.
So sorry, real quick. Can I put a pause on that? We'll come right back to that. But I have particular follow-up question I wanted to ask you about your communication response / establishing trust before we move away from that.
Please do.
So apologize, Brian. We'll come right back to your question. There is an inevitability that someone will have a problem
Right.
that you and your entire department do not agree with.
I
So
expect that to happen on the
How
first
do
day,
you
Charlie.
how do you, with this plan that this concept that you're talking about, address that person's concern in a way that avoids patronizing them?
Right. And this is going to get into a part of what I'm finding difficult to express about this is I have made a decision to not to sort of sequester my ongoing dissatisfaction with the code of conduct and the moderation team. But the more I try to describe what I think the problems and the solutions might be without going there, the more I'm feeling that loss. So I think that and this is a disagreement that I had with Brian a lot as when he was head moderator, is that I don't think that the moderation team understands their role as a neutral arbiter of what is acceptable discourse. And I think that some of that is willful ignorance because they don't want that responsibility. They want a different responsibility. They want to do a different job. But the consequence of the job they have is that they have become the neutral arbiter of what is acceptable discourse. And what I don't know how to make sure that someone can get banned and still feel included in the community. I think what I can promise is if you get moderator attention, let's say for in a public disagreement with me, you will get my private number. Like I will continue that discussion with you uninterrupted by the moderator action. I think that it is impossible to separate the extent to which getting banned from the forums, even for a few days, makes someone feel like they're not welcome. And I don't think that the sort of dismissive attitude of, well, they're just not, they'd be welcome if they were willing or able to follow the rules. I understand that argument, but I think it's dismissive and oversimplistic. And I think that Charlie, thank you for pushing back on my original formulation of this, because it is helping me to concretize what I'm getting at here. It's that the process of the process by which this community deals with dissent and disagreement has a way of driving people out of the community, and I think that I think that there's a way that we talk to each other on these message boards that isn't how we would talk to each other either face to face, certainly, or even just in a private or in a different online forum. And I think it's because there's an element of public performance and public discourse to but even when I say that out loud, I don't quite know how to finish that thought. It's just and this does feel like it's not really, I mean, on some level, this feels like it's not really helpful. Like it wouldn't be really helpful if I have a complaint and you're just telling me, well, I hear you and I'm including you, but I'm not actually going to agree with you or do anything about it. But that's almost what I think I think that's the first step, is that people with complaints need to be assured that they are heard and included and part of the community.
Okay, thank you. So let's Brian just unfortunately dropped off the call.
Brian just dropped off, but I will.
Let's
I
go
will,
back to Brian's. Let's go back to Brian's
yes,
question, which was
and
essentially.
I saw this because Mike Shea brought it up. I did notice he brought it up also on the message boards. Is that so? First of all, I think I think people perhaps are reading too much into me making a joke about something Donald Trump said at the 2016 Republican National Convention. So I alone can fix it is about 50% hyperbole anyway. But the more substantive point is that there is ambiguity between only I can fix it and I can fix it alone. And I don't think I don't think either of those are exactly what I mean. What I mean possibly is I think that I have a understanding that is not shared by a lot of people about what is wrong in the community. That is that, and obviously I can't fix a community alone, but I think that I think that and hopefully in this process I'll be able to give more concrete details about about what I think as Brian asked about what I think the problem and solutions are. But I think that what I mean by I alone can fix it is I think that I have identified the problems, and I'm whether as I said when Jonathan asked why me in particular should be the guy. Well, I don't think it's me in particular. I think it's the ideas I have. And the ideas I have necessarily involve including others in the solution. So the short answer is I don't literally mean that I alone can fix it.
Okay. Jonathan, I'm just, did you have any further questions from your list that you wanted to tackle?
No, I think we covered most of them.
Okay. I have a couple more that others have posted I want to hit you with.
Great.
Just sort of going back to what we talked about earlier about, your leadership experience and management experience. Rather than talk about experience, I want to talk more about style.
Yes.
So how would you describe your leadership style? Like some examples would be, I'm more of a coaching leader, or I'm more of a vision leader where I'll set a vision and have other people implement it, or I'm more of a autocratic leader. How would you describe your style of leadership that we would expect in the second edition director position?
I would say more of a vision leader. I would say one of my weaknesses is dealing with details. When I have been a member of a team, in general, I have needed someone else to be the detail-oriented member of the team. I feel that I feel that my goal as leader would be to provide a vision and to try to ensure that everyone's efforts are moving that vision forward. And I would say that I do have autocratic tendencies, but I would want to struggle to avoid that. I would hope that people would that people would forcefully disagree with my vision when they don't like it, and I if that makes sense.
Sure. Do you anticipate yourself being more hands-on as a manager, more, here are your deadlines and your benchmarks, hit them? Like, how do you describe yourself as a manager going into this role?
And this may contradict the idea of me being a vision-based leader, honestly, but I'm not sure what the right way to approach the right management style for second edition is for second edition projects is as I said, I need to get a feel for who is on what team and what resources are available. I don't know that I don't know how valuable deadlines are to this process. I don't think that it's good to obviously it's not good to get bogged down in never producing anything, but I don't think we should be afraid to delay a project by a couple weeks or a month if it's not ready. And I think that the extent to which I would be a hands-on manager is in ensuring that things are ready before they're released, or before they make it to the next step of the process. I think that, and I'm not saying that this is a particular mistake anyone has made at any particular point. I'm trying to envision what my management style would be, and it would be that it would be that I would not want to necessarily be hands-on at every step of the process, but I would want to be aware of every step of the process.
Okay. So just hopefully quick question. Your communication style, there are really sort of 4 primary styles: an aggressive communicator, a passive communicator, a passive aggressive communicator, or an assertive communicator. How would you describe yours?
I don't know. I don't know the difference between aggressive and assertive, but it's one of those probably. I'm unfamiliar with the terms, but
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's more just yeah, I don't really want to get into communications theory. That's fair.
It sounds like assertive is it sounds like aggressive is what you get when you try to be assertive but aren't good at it.
It's more of a going straight to the point, where assertive is more this is true, this is true, this is true. Where aggressive is more like, I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
I would say I would say my communication style that I strive to have is straight to the point, but accepting of disagreement.
Okay. So I want to ask you a theoretical question about criticism. In particular, let's say that you're the second edition director, and someone goes on the forums and makes a very critical post that is potentially unfounded and or hurtful, but does not violate our code of conduct. So there's nothing, it's not a profanity laced tirade personally attacking you, but it is very critical of you and your decisions, and you don't particularly think that it's fair. Can you illustrate for us how you would respond to such a criticism?
Okay, my first inclination is to respond in kind, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to remind myself that I'm not going to do that right now. But what I think my second considered response would be to so let's see. I want to say I would respond privately, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to not I don't want to make it seem like I'm not responding publicly to conceal anything. What I think that is so there's there's sort of two possibilities. The first possibility is that that's just someone being abusive just to be abusive, and in which case it almost doesn't matter what I do. So let's ignore that for now. The assumption that I would make is that there is something, there is an issue that is perhaps unstated in that not profanity laced tirade, but personally abusive tirade or whatever, however you phrased it. I think that the goal should be to get to what the underlying issue is, and I think the guiding principle should honestly be to not ignore personal attacks, but not like not treat them as disqualifying for the underlying issue. If someone's I guess what I'm trying to say is, if someone's that mad at me, I assume there's a reason. And even if their reason is not, even if what they're saying is not factually accurate, I assume the reason is the challenge that anyone in a position of authority in a community needs to accept is to address the problem, regardless of how it's been phrased or whether it's been fully articulated in the initial sort of cry of rage.
That's fair. So I'm particularly, here's the question from another member.
Sure.
Under a Ben Hosp administration, what would 2E look like 1 year from now? And what accomplishments would you be touting as part of your period of review?
Oh, that is, well, that is a good question. I think I would like to be touting as I think I've been saying all along, I would like to be touting a accomplishment of improving the state of the culture of this community. And I don't think I can promise that. And I also recognize that some people that people may reasonably want to know more about what I would be touting about the status about the game itself. And I have to say, I don't think there are. The game itself is in a pretty good place right now. I have a lot of I have ideas of, as I've said, I have ideas about how the process could be improved, or whether or not how many people need to be on what team, or how many people need access to what board. But I think that the game itself is in a good place. I think that the opportunity for a lot of improvement is in the community itself. So that would be the focus of my administration, and that would be unfortunately, that would be the hardest to have any sort of concrete deliverable for the period of review. So I'm not sure how to answer that, because I'm not sure what either in the game or in the community. I'm not sure what sort of measurable achievements are, how you would measure any achievements. It wouldn't be it's unfair to say, well, number of cards printed or whatever, right? Like that's not.
That's an easy metric to inflate.
Yeah, right.
You could print 100
right
universal basic people and say I printed 100 cards.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. What's giving me trouble is I don't know what I'm having trouble coming up with what an achievement for the second edition director during the period review that would actually be measurable would even be.
Well,
I'm sorry,
let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you that it's hard to say, here's this number versus this number. That's hard to convey. But one of the things that I was asked during my peer review this past year, again, I'm not trying to make it about me, but
Yeah.
what was something I was proud of? And my answer was increased communication. Now, you can have some measure because you can count the number of forum posts and articles from one year to another year, but really that's not a measure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that's just an example of the type of thing, like, and your answer of, I would like to see the culture be better is valid, but is there anything else in that vein that you would want to be bragging about 1 year into a Hosp administration?
So in that vein, I mean, there are things like I could say I would like there to be increased communication, but I don't know that that's a goal in and of itself. I've said a lot. I've talked a lot about increasing communication and increasing trust in this interview, but that's been in the service of getting the community to be less angry at each other. So I don't know that. So I guess what I'm getting at is I would like to make sure that the things that I am viewing as accomplishments are actually accomplishments. And I don't know that I can give a satisfactory answer to that question, but I think you'll know if I'm doing a good job at making the community less awful. Whether and I think you'll know that whether or not I tout it during my period of review.
Okay. So what is one thing that you feel the previous director of second edition did well that you would seek to replicate or improve upon?
Okay. I did have an example for this, but I've forgotten it now. But what I do think Ross did well is he had a habit of when there was a big errata or a set coming out right before a major tournament, he would send the proofreading file or I forgot exactly what set it was, but the idea that possibly to avoid a repeat of what was it, the peak performance worlds, where people were getting a set and not familiar with it and bad things happened, to make sure that people aren't ambushed by new cards at a big tournament. I think that was a good habit he had.
Okay, sort of the converse question.
And when I remember the thing that I can't remember now, I'll let you know.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you feel the previous director didn't do well, and given the opportunity, how would you fix fallout from that? And what would you do differently going forward that would prevent similar fallout from happening again?
I think.
And again, this is not let's shit on Ross Patel. Let's
yeah. Well, I mean, literally the question is what do you think Ross fucked up? But I know what you mean. Yeah. So I think that I think that the number one problem with the previous director was an inability to or I don't want to say inability because it's not like it never happened, but a unwillingness to back down from a position once taken publicly. I think that this organization has a tendency towards circling the wagons as a response toward criticism, and I think that Ross had an unfortunate tendency to lean into that. And I think that my main priority would in fact be leaning away from that and trying to be receptive to criticism and willing to change to change my mind and reverse decisions when appropriate.
Okay, that's fair. Sorry, my phone just decided to shut down, so I need to open it again and look at the next question. What is your opinion of how the Department of Second Edition is currently structured? And if you were the director, would you look to make any changes to that structure?
So as I've said, I think that the teams are, and again, without knowing the full composition of some of these teams, this is all my perception as someone without all the information. But
so it's more structural than staffing, like
right.
Yeah.
No, it's in general. I think that there is a too many cooks problem in the structure, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there need to be fewer people, but there need to be and this is again going to be a little bit self-contradictory, but there needs to be more formalized interaction among the departments. But without sort of without what we currently do, which is sort of just throw everyone into the all staff or the playtesting boards and let them all sort of interact all at once. What there needs to be a formal step where I don't want to say needs to be, but I would like to see a formal step where design interacts with rules earlier in the process. I would like to see similar to that. I would like to see a step where errata and design talk earlier in the process about errata that's under consideration. Because what I don't like is everyone does their own piece and then hands it off, and then who knows what happens to it.
Sorry, my mic was muted there. How would you manage and resolve conflict between your staff members? And related to that, do you have a plan for retaining good volunteers and recruiting new volunteers to do the necessary work to realize your vision?
I don't have a plan specifically for recruitment. I think that the plan for retaining good volunteers is to ensure that ensure that they, not that I don't want to say that they feel valued, but ensure that they see the value that they add. People, I think that what gets people burned out on Trek CC work in general is just the feeling that no one is paying attention to what they're doing. And I feel like, and I don't want to say that recruiting new volunteers is not going to be a priority, but I do feel like there's like some of the, like there's some, it does feel like some places are either overstaffed or possibly underutilized. I don't know that recruiting volunteers for sort of behind the scenes making the game is needs to be a one of the top priorities right now. I think that maybe the room for more recruitment is in promoting the game, but again, I don't know what the. I'm not sure that this is something I think it's fair to say that my vision doesn't include, is I don't know what form public promotion of the game needs to take. I'm open to input on that, but I don't have a fully formed idea of how that works, because I don't know that I don't know that we're in a position to promote this game to people who aren't already playing it, or aren't at least returning players. And that's not to say that there are no new players, but I don't know how to make them.
Okay. So I have 2 more questions, but before I ask them, does anyone else want to jump in and ask a question? I don't want anybody to feel like they haven't had a shot to talk.
Hey, Charlie, this is Brian. Sorry, I fell off for a little bit, but I'm back on for the moment. I just
He
want
did
to follow up
answer-
on what
he did
Ben
answer
just
your
said.
question.
Yeah.
He did
The
answer your
question is
Steve.
the question is, you might be the short answer to the question is, you might be taking my joke about something Trump said a little bit too literally, but
Yeah, you can catch it
I
in
just
the
want
replay.
to get you on the record for what you actually meant, so everybody who's not able to participate can
it's
get that.
more that only I can fix it, unless I can fix it by myself.
Okay, fair enough. So I just want to follow up on what you just said about you don't necessarily know how to make new players. Based on what I've seen, there are a few people out there that are willing and able to find and make new players. Lucas Thompson and Fritz Meissner are 2 of the people I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and you don't mean people who are physically making new players.
Oh yeah, I mean conscripts are another thing, but me and John are working on that right now.
Right,
So that's
right.
a whole different
Right,
thing.
right.
But for people who are actually like trying to promote the game and recruit, like I'm thinking of like the Fritzes and the Lucases of the world, what would you do as 2E director to empower them and give them what they need to go do that, even if you don't necessarily know what that is? Like how do you see yourself empowering and enabling them to go out and do good things?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good thing to part of, and obviously this isn't a great forum for recognizing their contributions, but yes, people who do seem to have that special sauce. I think the priority needs to be to staying in touch with them and making sure that they have whatever they need, and anything that they would like, be able to try to. I mean, I can't promise to give them whatever they want, but make sure that I know what they want, so that I can give them what support I can, if that makes sense. That people who do seem to have that ability should be given the resources to do their thing.
Okay, and so related to that, and this sort of ties back to a previous question about some of the stuff that went on last year. I know at one point, Lucas was looking to design some starter decks for new player friendliness. And one of the things that was, sort of thrown out there as an idea was a Voyager headquarters. And that obviously turned into a giant shitstorm on the staff boards, because it sort of came out of the blue.
Right.
But, on the merits, is that an idea that you think is like worth exploring, if that's what people say they need to do to make the game simpler? Like, you find a Voyager fan, giving them basic mechanics off the headquarters is a lot easier than this is the one thing that doesn't play the same as everything else. Like, is that something you would want to like relook at through a more formalized, test and development channel than what happened, obviously, which was not optimal?
Right. Here is something where I'm going to stick by my snarky response, is that I don't think the person that is a Voyager fan and not fans of other forms of Star Trek exists necessarily. But I think there's room for that. I think that the answer, I don't know the answer to here's how to play what's a Voyager deck that plays the same as other decks. I think now that I actually think about it, I wonder if a hologram deck is the way to go for that particular question. because that's at least that at least has the Voyager characters on it. But I don't have an answer to that question of how do we get a Voyager demo deck? And I think that's I think the fact that Voyager plays differently than the other main cast affiliations is it's an inherent it's so inherent to how they play that I don't know how to address it in a way that is not either a workaround or a demo only card or something along like what I know is that the way we went about it is let's make a card that could be played in a constructed format, standard format deck. That is just like a standard Voyager deck with the same, with like standard Voyager personnel, but different way that playing with a headquarters. That's not going to work, and I don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you. So, there's no secret that you have not been a fan of the moderation and the code of conduct on the forums and have occasionally, for whatever reason, fallen afoul of that.
Okay.
To not mince words, you have been banned.
Yeah. I got banned. I got banned for 2 months for cyber terrorism, Charlie.
Setting aside those disagreements.
Yes.
They are the current rules of the community, rules of the forums.
Right. And
if you were to become the director of second edition, would your relationship to the moderators and the code of conduct be maintained, or would you expect it to change?
So I would not expect special treatment from the moderators. I do think that there is a chance that I would be a board member and banned, which would be awkward for everyone involved. And I will promise to try to avoid that situation, but I don't. But it would be unrealistic to make that promise. However, what I think I've gotten at before is the more serious problem I have with the moderators, and let me say it again, is that I think that they underestimate the power they have in setting the limits of acceptable discourse. And I would ask that I would, I know they don't take orders from the I know they're not directly answerable to me, but I would ask that they not I would ask that they not ban people for disagreeing with me, even however impolite that disagreement is. And as I've said, I will if someone does run afoul of the moderators while disagreeing with me, I will make every effort to ensure that I continue contact with that person and continue that discussion. That I don't let that be the end of the discussion. If you're asking, am I going to be a dick on the forums if I'm the design director? Probably less. But again, I am going to make a point of being engaged and involved in discussion. And if that means that I break the rules, I will expect to be dealt with according to the rules. But that doesn't mean that I will go out of my way to do so and expect special treatment.
Okay. So my last question, I'm not looking to getting into a debate on the merits of the supposition. So I want to just make that clear. You have identified repeatedly that there is a problem in the culture of second edition, particularly how second edition players and staff communicate with each other.
Yes.
I don't believe that problem exists on the first edition boards.
I agree. Yeah.
So, but I don't particularly want to discuss the merits of that.
Right,
But if we accept that as true,
yes.
that there is not a culture problem for one game, what do you think is the source of that, in particular with 2E versus the whole boards? That it's not a systemic issue everywhere.
I don't know, is the short answer. But I think I think that the shape of the I think the shape of the problem is something that Maggie identified or said during her period of review, which is that the first edition people are in a way just happy to be here because first edition was deader than second edition. And I think that there's an extent that so I think that the shape of the answer to that, even if it's not the entire answer, is that the continuing committee as currently constituted has more of a legitimate ownership to first edition because they kind of restored it from almost nothing. Whereas second edition was just handed to you all at the end when Decipher lost the license, but who are you anyway? I want to say that a element of the first edition of why first edition why the first edition community seems happier is almost earned legitimacy, that the leadership has earned legitimacy. But that's not the entire answer, and I don't know. And I know that examining the answer to that question, if like me, you think that is a correct supposition that the first edition community is less bad, than or less, I don't say less bad, but less toxic, less healthier. That's what I mean. I don't know the answer to that, and I do think that we need to study that. We need to look into what we can learn. What the second edition community needs to look into what we can learn from the first edition community. I think having Scottish Neil do the second edition peer review was a step in the right direction. Honestly, I think I think there's some particular personalities, including him, that are part of the reason why that's a better community. And that's not to say that there's anyone in particular that I think is being a bad personality on first edition, on second edition, but I don't know. I do know that if there was any idea that getting rid of John Corbett would fix the second edition culture, that's obviously not the case because he's been gone for a year and it's not better. So I do know that the last thing we tried didn't work.
Okay. So yeah, I'll ask if the panel or anyone has any other questions for Ben that we haven't already covered. I know Nerdo, you joined us late, so you'll have to catch up. But yeah, did anyone else have any other questions? Anyone?
I would have the question why Ben thinks that banning John wasn't a good idea.
Oh, I mean, I don't want to. What I was specifically referring to is that obviously didn't fix the problem because I think it clearly has not made the community healthy. So I would argue that it was not a good idea, but I don't want to get into why it was not a good idea. But it certainly wasn't the whole solution. I think you can agree with that.
I have definitely to agree with that. I also wrote on the forums. I think you asked the question if John is the whole problem of the whole forums, and my answer to that was definite no.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mean to make that about this about that. I don't mean to make a big deal about that. I just mean that that's an example of something that people identified as a problem and were wrong about, or were wrong about whether that would fix the problem. I think that I don't want to turn this into the same argument that we had last year, but I think that yeah, I think this, but I do think this community is stronger with him in it than without him in it, and
What makes you feel that way exactly?
Because he does a lot to promote the game, and he was one of the more active members of the community. But if you know, I recognize that you disagree with me, and I'm not going to convince you right now. But I'm fortunately, the position I'm under consideration for doesn't have anything to do with whether he's allowed on the forums or not.
Well, I have to add one thing to that. John was very, very, very good in his job by making new cards. There is no doubt about that. But his the way he personally communicated on the forums is on a whole other page, I would say. What would you say? How can you weight one thing against the other? Being good for the cards, but not so sparkling for the community when it comes to terms of communication with players, especially new ones, which for him were a myth.
You know,
sorry. I want you to answer the question, but let's not. I don't want to focus on this. Isn't John Corbett isn't up for anything here, so let's
right.
Abstract it instead of saying, you know, if you have a person who's valuable to the community in one aspect and potentially a detriment in another aspect.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
That's exactly the question. Yes.
I don't think that it is necessarily an untenable position, as I kind of jokingly got at when Charlie asked me what my relationship to the COC and the moderators would be if given the position. I don't think that it's untenable for someone to have either a board position or a high-ranking volunteer position and be banned from the public forums. I will note that is while Nathan has been getting spun up on fully taking over the design director, that was exactly the position we had for the last few sets of second edition, was John kind of driving the design of them, of Shattered Mirror and Sacrifice of Angels and whatever the Terra Prime set is called that I can never remember, while being publicly permanently banned. So that's not an untenable position, that you can be active behind the scenes and just not active in public.
Okay, so Ben, did you have any questions for me about this process or what's going to happen?
I do not have any off the top of my head, and the dog is starting to do the potty dance. So I will skip my opportunity to ask those questions, and will reach out to you if I have such questions in the future.
Perfectly fair. So just to recap, I'm going to end this here real quick, but we will be keeping the position open through the 31st. That's next Friday. And then potentially scheduling interviews the week after that. Once all of the interviews are completed, all of these videos from the people that did consent will be made public for anybody to listen to and comment on. And then we'll be deliberating internally, and then we'll be making a decision. I do give you my word that whether you are chosen or not, you will hear about it before you read about it. I won't not answer your application. So I want to thank you for being here, and thank Nerdo and Brian and Jonathan for joining me. Have a good day, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.